And your host, Greg Cardone.
Welcome and welcome back to the hot seat. I'm your host, Greg Cardone. And in the continuation of Women's International Month, we have Ingrid Pujol,
Hi, Greg.
child psychologist, writer, award winning poet, and she's just an all around great person. So, welcome, Ingrid. How are you doing today?
I
April Fools. We're not really doing this.
Yes. First of all, thank you for having me here and sharing, giving me a space to share a little bit of myself and my work with your fantastic audience. So thank you again, and I am doing great today. Very happy and excited to share this space with you.
Oh, it's been a while. You're a pretty busy person, and we do whatever we can to accommodate our guests on the show. So today we're going to speak with Ingrid about her book, and I have it right here. Let me tell you, it's called Puzzled. It
Mhm.
is in English and also in Spanish, which was pretty amazing. So it's for a lot of our audience. And let me tell you, I read it. It was unlike anything that I expected to be in a children's book. Everybody looks at like Dr. Seuss and very simplistic. I had to really read it, wrap my head around it, but I could see where some of the children that read it actually can catch on to it. So give us a little background on your education, and then we'll talk about the book. So, yeah, please tell us about how you developed in becoming a child psychologist. Pretty interesting.
Right. So, since first of all, my name again is Ingrid Pujol. I was born in Cuba. I lived in Dominican Republic for about 10, 11 years, and then I moved to South Florida, Miami, 2004, and then 2017 I came here to Orlando. So I've been around a little bit. So since I was a child, I knew that I wanted to help people, and at the same time, I like this. I like art a lot, but literature specifically. And since I was a kid, I remember being 6 or 7. I would write like little stories, little books. I was always very drawn to poetry. So when I decided to go to grad school, I did 2 years in med school. I was going to become a doctor. I wanted to be a psychiatrist. But then I wasn't, this is not going to give me a lot of time, free time to work on my art. And I said, you know what? I still like to help people. So I think I'm going to choose a different career path where still have the flexibility and the time and to do more of me, to do a different thing, to do more with my talent and not only with the things with the schooling. This are my books, this is what I'm learning in school, this is how I can apply it. But myself as a person, I know I have different talents and different skills totally unrelated to my formal professional schooling. So I wanted to combine both, and the time came when I said, you know what, we were going through quarantine, the whole isolation, right? The COVID brought upon us. And I had the time, I had the free time, I was completely alone. And I said, this is a good time. This is a good pause to do something for somebody, especially for myself, because many of the concepts in the book come from a pretty personal place. How I was able to deal with the crisis, that we were all experiencing, and other personal conflicts and situations that I was going through myself. So say, I have the pause, I have the time, now let's do it. And that's why I came up with an idea to create a book that, even if it's intended for children, especially ages 9 and up, it's for all of us, really. Because I was talking to Greg before, and we don't get to pick, right, the crisis or the situations that life throws at us. It doesn't matter if you're 80 years old or if you're 4, you might be hit with the same thing. So when is it really too soon or too late to talk to children, at least expose them to these concepts? That's how the idea of the book came into play.
and reading it, well, I don't have any, my children are grown up,
Hmm.
but I could actually relate to the same instances in there, the metaphors.
Right.
And that's what, when we spoke before, and when I gave you a little feedback, were incredible. And again, I'm a technical writer, creative to an extent in scripts, but you as an author and my other author guests on have something that just takes it to a whole nother level. So when you're reading it, it becomes very visual, which is a very effective way of getting your whole concept across.
Right. And that's important that you mentioned that, because I thought about that. Obviously, the child goes through different developmental levels, right? And at each level, they're able to understand certain concepts. Sometimes more of a concrete type of thinking, sometimes it's more abstract. So I am aware of all that. And I said, I know that I'm introducing concepts that are pretty complex. So I try to find a way how to combine that with something physical, something that they can hands-on, something more tactile, that they can grasp the concept in their hands if they cannot yet grab the concepts in their minds. And the title, like you see, the title of the book is Puzzled. So I thought about like, maybe actually a puzzle toy, right? Maybe they cannot understand what feeling scatter is, what integrating all those parts of yourself, what that really means. But if a child has a toy, right, a puzzle in front of them, and we can label the parts of the puzzle and we can work integrating that, I go, maybe this is like a good idea of how to bring these concepts that are up here with this toy, this idea, this dynamic that is more at their developmental level. So the goal of the book was to kind of like integrate those two for younger audiences, for older kids, and even for the adults in their lives.
That's excellent. And that's what I was reading into, especially when I got to the part of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to just backtrack a little bit. You have your dog, Ellie. And
Protagonist is.
and and we were living vicariously through the eyes of your dog and the issues of your dog. And I was like, wow, this is great. And then as you're following the issues of your dog and I'm not going to go too much into, the description, you have to read the book, but just the journey that the dog went on and some of the difficulties that Ellie was meeting, I could see that. And for a child to live through a dog, which they probably could relate better through a dog's life than if an adult tried to explain it to
Right.
them. And
Right.
that I was kind of like blown away when I was done. And you said the puzzle, and that was a pretty interesting or intricate part of the book, to where all the pieces were scattered and things were changing and parts of the puzzle were missing. And now everything came back.
Right. And I think
That
that's what we were experiencing as a collective, because that's what COVID did. It took many people's lives. It put us in isolation. I mean, it brought so many challenges that as a society we haven't dealt with for century. I don't know. It wasn't really a different crisis what we used to deal with on a daily basis. And those issues that Ellie was presenting, I was going through those issues myself. So all this is happening. I'm losing a partner. I was going through a breakup. This is happening to me and I have to be alone. So all these holes, right, that I was feeling, how do I integrate all that? and walk out into a new society, because it transformed, the world that we were living in. And the idea of the book, I remember one day I was having dinner, and Ellie's a dachshund. She's a mini dachshund, so she has a very long body and very short legs. So I looked at her and I go, it's so funny, because most of the dogs that are kind of like her size, right? She seems so short because her legs are short, right? But if she was able to stand on her bad legs, she actually will be taller than the other dogs. So pretty long. So the idea was like, maybe in order for us to rise right above our circumstances, maybe we need to stay grounded. Maybe in order to rise above, we need to actually know the ground first. What is the ground? What are the things that gives us roots? What are the things that we stand for? So I looked at her and I go, well, Ellie, your anatomy gave me a whole book, an idea for a story. So that was actually a little funny that I looked at her and I go, I can't believe that I got an idea out of your anatomy. But that thing, like, in order to rise higher, rise above, we need to know, where do we stand? What are our roots, and what are we doing here, basically, before we go to a new level?
And that's what COVID can do to you. It definitely segregated our society.
Right.
I'm not going to discuss the whole COVID thing, but it did. I was actually out in California at that time, 2020, where COVID originated, and people were masked up. They had PPEs on. They were duct taped. They were in Costco wearing biohazard suits and full. I was waiting for somebody to come in with like a, oxygen tank and, full respirator. Some had respirators on. Well, coming from Florida, we were a little bit different. So yes, you had to wear masks to go into Dollar General. It was, wow, I've never experienced, such strictness in my life. And I would walk down the street, no mask. I was, and here were people with gloves and masks and everything. And when they saw me walking down the street, they immediately walked across the street and on the other side. So they probably figured, this guy's from Florida. That was the joke with my wife and I. It was like, yeah, they probably figured that guy's from Florida because they don't wear masks.
And even though that the book is not about COVID, it was originated. It was
right.
out of the COVID times, but I didn't want to even mention the word COVID, because COVID was the big crisis in that moment, but it can be any crisis. It can
right.
Even in your home, it can be the death of a parent, the death of a partner, it can be a divorce, it can be a war. So there's so many COVID-like situations at a bigger or even smaller scale.
Right.
So I don't want to code it as a COVID book. It was just what we were going through, and it was just
right.
Where the book was came out.
It was a culmination of everything, and like I say, it was the pieces of the puzzle could be anything that could affect your life. Right. So the sum of the parts. Yes. But that was just one of my instances, of being there. So that was just the Greg part of the puzzle, or the Ingrid part, or the Ellie part, or whomever part of the puzzle. That was great. And I'm gonna post stuff up, but there's Ellie. I'll be posting actually some photos within the recording itself, but Ellie was cool. I felt Ellie. I was very empathic to Ellie's situation. I really was.
But I told my issues on Ellie, and I go, Ellie, you deal with that now.
It's all about you, Ellie. You are also an award-winning poet.
I am.
That was pretty exciting. Tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about that.
Okay, that contest that I won is a contest that is takes place in Central Florida, all the Central Florida region, not only Orlando but all the surrounding areas. It's called Words and Wonder, and is typically the judge is our poet here in Orlando. So I was vacationing at my parents, and something told me, "What about poetry? You haven't written poetry in a long time," and that is my genre. I just love poetry. So in the middle of my vacation, I went online and I googled poetry contest in Florida, and I found that one, and I said, I'm just gonna write a poem. And the theme that year was the contest is called Words and Wonders, but they have different themes. So the theme that year was music, and yeah, we have an amount of lines. I think that line limit was 40, something like that. So it had to be a pretty short poem. And I go, what can I do with music that has meaning? Because that's the thing with my art. I want it to have meaning. I just don't want to entertain. I don't want to just create a product that is appealing, that is pretty. It had all those components, of course, because it's art at the end of the day, and that's how we initially capture, right, the attention of the audience. But I like to do things with meaning. So I go, what can I do? What can I write about music that is meaningful? So the word note came to my mind just like that. And I go, wait, note can have two meanings, as in written message, right? Like a written note, and as a musical note. So basically, the idea of my poem was a perspective, how something that starts as a written message at the end transforms into something completely different and ends up being a musical note instead of a message. So that is the idea of the poem. The title is called A Thank You Note, and it's about perspective, something that started like this and concluded like this. Is it really A? Is it really B? Do we get to transform A into B? So it was kind of like, it's not a direct message telling people how to interpret reality, and it's just giving the perspective. Just you have point A, point B. What do we do with that? How do we integrate those? Do we go after A? Do we go after B? Do we create a third point? So it's just about perspective and contemplating a different viewpoint.
I have to read it.
Oh,
Where
it's on
where
Orlando. Yes, on the City of Orlando website. So if you Google Ingrid Pujol a thank you note, you will see it will link you directly to the winners of that day. So I think they made a mistake and they listed it twice, like first place on top and first place on the bottom. So I think the one that's listed on the bottom is the one that has all my information on my picture and all that. But it'll take you straight to the poem.
we'll definitely post all the correct information so you can find her poems. You could find the book Puzzled.
Mm-hmm.
Getting back to Puzzled, and obviously there are many cultures in America right now, and you decided to also translate it into Spanish and correlate it right next to each other. And again, I don't know if you could really, see it, but you'll see there's actually two paragraphs and two sections to the book, one in English and one in Spanish. I've never seen that before. So where did you come up with that? Obviously, you didn't want to not include another segment of society, especially with your background.
Right, absolutely. And we live in a very bilingual state and city, and obviously this is the country, right, that's giving me the opportunity to display and showcase my art, and it's giving me the tools and the education to work on those skills to be able to share it with the world. But I don't want to forget, where I come from, and I thought it was also a way not only to share it with people from my culture, similar cultures, but also a way to inspire them. Like, you can go to another country, you can learn a new language, and yes, you can create a product that everybody will read. So again, it's not only the message of the book, but I also wanted to be inspirational to those. Yeah, and I had to invest a lot of time and a lot of resources, but I did it. So if you can do it, if you find something that you really believe in, you can do it. So I wanted to be an example of that for whichever culture. Doesn't matter if it's the American culture or Hispanic. It's just a general, a very universal message.
The inclusivity,
Mm-hmm.
I think, was great when I saw that concept. I was like, this was genius. You know, we could sell a lot of books like this and not.
It was definitely extra work and extra. I feel I had an incredible Josefa Quintana. She was my editor for the Spanish portion back in Havana. So she's actually a professional editor in Havana, and she helped me a lot with that. So I'm very thankful for all her help and her guidance on that.
Just give us a little explanation to our viewers at home, the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist.
Well, as psychiatrists, I mean, we both obviously address mental health issues in different settings, but the psychiatrist is a medical doctor, so they study, right, all these conditions from the medical perspective. What is happening in the brain? What is happening in the bloodstream? And they manage the medication. How do certain medications affect you? How do they interact with other medications, with your weight, with your anatomy, with your age? So psychologists, we also address the mental health issues, but from a more behavioral perspective. Okay, the doctor is gonna cover that part. So now that you're taking those medications, how are we gonna, because that doesn't necessarily imply that the behavior is going to change, because the medicine can only do so much. So how do we integrate, for example, in the school setting when I'm working, if a child is depressed, if they're experiencing a crisis at home, obviously those behaviors and those signs, you're going to see them in the school setting. So how can we work with the teacher, with the parents, with other outside clinicians to manage that anxiety in the school system, to lower the anxiety, to manage the depressive symptoms, to talk to that child and be able to put a seed, to motivate and to help them feel like they're not alone. So we address all these issues from a more behavioral perspective, and the doctors from a medical perspective. And the combination of two, obviously, is where the success is. Sometimes medication is not needed. So most of the time, no. But at least in the school setting, most of it is behavioral. It's teaching the child how to regulate their own emotions, organize their work, complete the tasks. So it's sometimes we do have to combine the two fields.
And I'm glad you said that, because that was the next question I was going to bring up. Do you feel it would be it more behavioral, more than medicinal? But I guess they all have to work hand in hand, because
right.
that's kind of, if you have some sort of hormonal imbalance, something has to, bring something back in there.
For example, sometimes if we're going to work with a child who is severely depressed or is having some attention difficulties, that it's really hard for them to engage, right, in a verbal conversation, and to be able to follow through and be in the conversation. Obviously, if the inattention is so high that they cannot pay attention, or they're so depressed that they're falling asleep, they can stop crying, they won't be able to engage with an adult in a conversation. So in cases that severe, obviously the medical part needs to be covered first, and then we will provide the other services. It's not needed in all the cases, but that sometimes, many times, we work hand in hand with the medical professionals.
That's great. I like that. What do you have upcoming in the future? Another book?
Well, definitely, I would like to write another one. I just haven't had an idea yet that I say, this is different. I might actually write about that. So I'm still waiting for that inspiration to strike me. But I've been writing a lot of poetry in the meantime, and I have a couple of projects in the works. So I think it's time that I feed my other passion, which is poetry. And I think it's so important because it's such an old art form, right? It's the oldest literary genre. But I go, we live in a society that we want everything condensed, right? We want everything fast. We want, and at the same time, we want to grow. We want to be spiritual. We want to work in our inner worlds. And I go, wait, what about poetry? Poetry can be very brief, very short, very straight to the point, and you still get to deliver an important message. So I said, maybe there's a person that won't have time to read a 380 pages book, but maybe a 70, 40, even 20 lines poem can have a long lasting effect or impact on that person's day and that person, whatever they're experiencing in their lives. So I have a couple of things in the works now with poetry. So once I've covered that, I'll probably jump back to the narrative and think of another book.
I think that would be great. I had a guest on here recently, Mary Kay, very creative. Oh my. And she does a lot of inspirational and drawing and illustration. So I don't know, maybe you could both collaborate on something.
Absolutely. Love to get in contact with her. Thank you.
Yeah, because I was amazed, and my creativity is visual, photography, film.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I started at a very early age. 8mm. I still have some of the 8mm films. Most of mine were surfing when we were like 9 years old. Took my dad's wind-up camera, and we were taking. I have to dig them out. Those are archival, but and as you said, where everybody, it's I want it now, instant gratification, condensed. Oh, I can't wait. I have a lot of patience. I deal with people, but I'm not a doctor, not that kind of patience. But in my car, I don't have road rage, but I do talk to myself, which solves a lot of it. Like,
self-regulation techniques.
yeah, I try to. So when I get out of the car, it's like, okay, I'm not going to do anything I shouldn't do. Here's the crazy guy. But yeah, I guess there's got to be some sort of vehicle to put out to people to get their minds off of their just sheer craziness. And I've got, everybody has the same amount of time in every day. And when they go, I don't have time. Well, time management. I can't tell you how to run your life. If you have 3 part-time jobs, I don't know how you could resolve that. If I could, I probably wouldn't be sitting here doing interviews. I'd be up on, TED Talk telling people how not to work 3 jobs to make ends meet. But, everybody is in a different situation. And those, everybody is a part of the puzzle.
There you go.
We're all puzzle pieces. We're all pieces on a chessboard. We're just moving around,
Right.
that way.
It's up to one of us to bring our own piece to the center and try to make it a more cohesive effort, because we're all in this together, right?
So. Oh, yes, we definitely are. And that's what I try. When I read his book and when I read this book, it was up here like I was watching a movie. And I think people need more of an avenue to escape from their everyday doldrum. Some people do. Some people are out there having a great time. But, we're trying to bring people on the show like yourselves and my other guests that could provide some sort of benefit. And that's what I tell them. If one person finds what you do interesting, or if one person can benefit from what you do and what you provide, then the show is a success. I'm not looking to reach 1 million people. I'm looking to reach one person. You have
Absolutely.
to start with one person here. And I think with your book, and it's great on how you're, and what you do in your profession and what you're doing as a writer, because I think kids have a lot more problems than when I was a kid. I don't know. But I knew when we were kids, life was great. We didn't have a worry in the world. And now you have children at such an early age going through identity crisis and issues, and maybe their family environment is not all that good. So I think what you're doing is great, and maybe we can help them, or you can help them in a way, so when they grow up, they can help their kids and help the parents. So you work with some of the parents in
Yes.
in the school closely?
Right.
Yes.
Not directly like therapy with the parent, but when we have a case, we do an evaluation with a child, with a student, and we are able to detect where the strengths and where the weaknesses are and how to better help the student. Yes, we do have meetings with the parents, and we try to offer strategies and some recommendations, and we do follow up and try to collaborate with outside clinicians too, and with the teachers. We try to do a pretty comprehensive team effort to really help the child. And again, I'm so grateful that you've given me and Andrew Heller the opportunity to have this space as a vehicle to get some of my ideas and some of my work. One of my favorite quotes, I don't remember the author now, the name of the author, so I'm sorry, but the quote says, "Children are like wet cement. Anything you throw on them makes an impression." So it's so important at least to do a little. I mean, like, your space is not typically geared for that audience, for children, and you giving me the space to do that, it might reach a person or two of your audience. They might be parents, they might be fellow writers, they might be psychologists, and it might, I don't know, give them some idea on what to do and how to join this collective effort. So I am deeply grateful to you and the opportunity that you've given me.
Oh, my pleasure. And that's that's where we went. That was the idea of doing the show after we did our movie Grinders promotions,
Right.
to gonna go backwards, kind of like the original Willy Wonka. Okay, go back, and went back on it. Gene Wilder. We actually met, but we never were introduced at one of our first premieres, our early premieres. And I remember Andrew, inviting a bunch of friends over, and we have Andrew Heller as our mutual friend. And I remember seeing you, now that I saw your face, then we've been communicating. I was like, I remember, but I never met you. You were on one side and I was on the other.
Yeah. And I
And
for you, it's like they look so familiar to me.
where did I see you? So, you run into people like that, and here we are having, a fantastic conversation and learning about you. And that's what I keep saying is what I love doing about the show is I learn about other people in a way that you would never know who you meet. So that's, that old analogy of always say hi to someone in an elevator. And that was a story that a gentleman was going for a job interview. And there were people in the elevator, and this businessman in a suit and had all his briefs and suitcases, and the gentleman in the elevator, he held the door for him, and oh, thanks, and oh, hi, how you doing? Wow, looks like they went on. Well, it comes to find out that he was going to interview with person that he held the door for.
Wow.
And he said, and when he walked in and he looked, he goes,
"It's you."
yeah. Well, and he ended up getting the job because of what he did, where some people would hit those the close button real quick because I don't want to wait for this guy.
Right.
So you just never know who you're going to run into. Well, I have to thank you.
Thank you.
Very, very much for being on the show. I know your schedule is probably a little bit more hectic than mine, but to finally get you on here and to talk about and learn about what you do, and hopefully we can have somebody in the audience share, maybe get a hold of you. We'll have some information. However, we'll coordinate that. And like I said, if it helps one person, then we did our job. That's what it's all about here. So Ingrid Pujol, author of Puzzled, and there's Ellie wrapped in the blanket. That is so cool.
That's not fiction. That's real life.
That's the real life. But I love the feel of the book when you sent, and that's why I like doing, having authors on, because I get to read their books. Some books are a lot bigger than the others, and I'll read pages, of them. But I was like, wow, I like it. If that's the key of the book there. I know I amused myself with something simple like that. But again, Ingrid, thank you very, very much for being on the show. And I definitely would love to have you on again, and we can talk about some of your poetry when you get that going and share that.
And thank you. Yes, and you have my information. Whoever wants to reach out to me if they have questions about the book, I love to inspire people. So if they just need to talk to me for inspiration, I'm your girl. So please feel free to reach out, and anything I can do for you and join your efforts and whatever you're doing for the community, I would love to talk.
That's great. We'll definitely do that. Well, again, thank you very much. And as always, it's a beautiful day for an interview. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you.
We'll see you. Thank you.